Well, good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Brian Severson Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Community Engagement for Osseo Area Schools, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Ready to Restart virtual family conference series. We've been hosting these webinars and virtual conferences each of the last 4 days here in Osseo Area Schools, so we're thrilled that you could join us. A reminder that we are recording this webinar, and we'll be posting it to the ISD 279 YouTube page. And right before this meeting, I went on the YouTube page, and we've had over 500 views of our virtual family series from the last 3 days. So I'm excited that we're recording it and that giving people an opportunity to watch it at their convenient time for themselves. But thanks to those of you who decided to join us live this afternoon. Our goal today is to have an educator roundtable. So you'll hear some information, but you're mainly going to hear educators in our district share with you what they're thinking about this upcoming school year, some questions around challenges you had last year and what you might do to adapt this year. So we're hoping that it's a little more conversational versus us just doing a presentation and other participants listening. If you have questions throughout this virtual conference, just go ahead and click on the comment box and type it in there, and I'll be moderating, and we'll pause every now and then to answer questions as we go, or for sure at the end. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to all of our panelists who we'll introduce in a minute. Christina, if you could forward the slide. Thank you. Just a couple of reminders, and you're already all doing this, so thank you. Make sure to mute your mic unless you're the person speaking. And if you want, you can change your layout if you want to see the presentation fill the whole screen versus seeing speakers on the side. And then next, we're going to hear a message from our superintendent.
Hello, and welcome to our Ready to Restart family webinar series. I'm Corey McIntyre, Superintendent of Osseo Area Schools. We've designed these webinars just for you and your scholar. Our goal is to help you have the best school experience possible in this most unusual school year. The last 6 months has been challenging for students and families. I know you miss your friends, your teachers, and the community that surrounds you with care and support every day. We miss you too. We are determined to help you have a successful start to the new school year. These webinars will help scholars and their families learn about a brand new school called the Distance Learning Academy, make effective use of digital resources, understand how we're keeping students and staff safe, and gain insight into how our staff are re-envisioning what it means to do school during a pandemic. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your support of Osseo Area Schools.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we have 5 panelists with us today, and maybe what we'll do is I'll go ahead and answer or ask the first question, and we'll start with Bill. And before you answer the question, if you could just share your name and your role in the organization, and then go ahead and answer the question. So, all right, our first question is going to be, what areas have you been currently working on this week to be ready for the start of school on Monday?
Sure, thank you. Greetings from Oakview Elementary School. My name is Bill Kundig. I'm the lead principal here, serving a number of great families of our Huskies, K through 5, and we have some pre-K as well, so very excited to be here. We're really just kind of finalizing work through iterations of the master schedule and making sure that we can line up our academic interventions and other enrichment opportunities that we can employ, not just in the in-person hybrid in a couple weeks, but also through distance learning and remote hybrid.
I'm Brett Freyset, and I'm an EL teacher, so an English learning teacher at Osseo Senior High. I also teach in the science department, although as of a couple days ago, I added math and a few other subjects to that list. So that's what we're currently working on to get ready for Monday, is figuring out what we're teaching and figure out how we're going to teach things. because some of our classes had to be combined in order to have enough teachers to go around for our students. So we're just kind of adjusting and readjusting as the days go on. So every day it's a new list of challenges.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome from Rice Lake Elementary. I'm Margot Clavin, and I'm the proud principal of Roadrunners in our district. Brett, feel free to give me a jingle. I started my career as a math teacher, so if you need some help, you give me a call. We are busy getting ready with schedules, of course. We're starting off real strong with developing relationships even before our buildings open. We opted for a 10-minute listening conference with all of our families, so our staff have been reaching out and engaging either in a Google Meet or a visual tour of the room on the computer, phone calls, emails, whatnot, but we're just really trying to start those relationships before we begin on Monday. Obviously, getting our building ready, COVID ready for hybrid in a couple weeks is high on our priority and to-do lists. And really just committing ourselves to having weekly schedules ready for families that we will push out. We've made the promise that we're going to push them out every Friday by 4 p.m. So the family will have the schedule the weekend prior and ready to start business every Monday. So that's where our energies have been spent.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rev Hillstrom. I have the opportunity to serve the district as a Director of Educational Equity. There are countless things that we are doing through my department. We are basically 3 different divisions, and a lot of my efforts just today were with our bilingual assistants. We had our official onboarding opportunities where we provided training and opportunities for them to ask questions. We're working through our district level numbers of where our multilingual families are living and or attending, and making assignments to make sure that we have supports in place for that. As well as today, I heard from the Department of Education regarding some Indian education documentation needs. And so we've been working on that. Those are a couple of things that, for example, just today that we were working on. So thank you for letting me be part of your conversation this evening.
It's me, sorry. So hi, Sandy Beekle, social worker at Osseo Senior High. And welcome to all of you. It's good to have you. So as social workers, we have a little bit different task. First thing I've been doing is rearranging my comfortable chairs and getting them out of my office because they're not COVID friendly. So kind of creating a little bit more sterile space. But we've, the mental health team has been kind of preparing presentations for the staff on just kind of maybe what to expect from our students who maybe have a higher sense of stress and anxiety because they haven't been back in our buildings for about 5 months. We're reaching out to families to kind of make sure that people have transportation, their basic human needs are met with food and shelter and supplies. We're updating our resource pages for families. And really just kind of getting a handle on who are the kids that we need to serve, who has some immediate needs, and starting to develop curriculum around those areas. So lots to do.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what was your biggest challenge last year, specifically in the spring? And what are you doing to address it this year? And Brett, we'll start with you this time.
I would say our biggest challenges were making sure we were connecting with families, connecting with students, and we know that there were a number of challenges that students were facing, that families were facing. Teaching at the high school, we recognized that a lot of our students were working, picking up as many hours as possible. A lot of my families, the parents had lost employment, so students were trying to get up as much employment hours as possible to be able to provide for families. They were also providing childcare for the younger siblings. So we were really recognizing that they were facing a lot of those challenges, and we know that that's going to be a reality again for a lot of our families going into the fall and continuing through this year. So we're just really trying to find creative ways of connecting with our families. So this year we're really looking at providing synchronous learning options where families can, or students can attend live sessions, because we know that they need that social emotional learning time and that ability to connect with their teachers and ask and have questions answered live, but then also making sure that students have the ability and the opportunity to do that at a time that fits their needs, and being able to adjust to that. So with our department, we know that we have ESPs who are able to reach out to families. So we're being very intentional this year about setting aside Fridays as the time where they connect with the students that we haven't heard from, and just really being very intentional about these are sorts of the ways that we triage which students we're going to contact first, and the process for contacting them.
I think one of our biggest challenges was we literally reinvented school in 8 days, whether it was the model or the tools used. And so it put all of us in the boots of being a beginner, and across the board and across the system. So that obstacle of just not quite knowing all the technology, what's even a possibility, how do we want to sustain relationships if all we have is a digital platform? So just kind of having to tweak every nuance. But for sure, the technology, I think, was a big obstacle for us, not only how to use tools, but access for our students and families. And even some of our staff, their homes weren't equipped with home offices and whatnot to be up and running within an 8-day window. So just that sense of being a beginner was an obstacle. And what we're doing now, this fall, is just really working collaboratively with each other. What were the lessons learned? What is the technology? And of course, people got versed in them over summer, but the technology is increasing this summer as well, right along with the need for it. So it's almost impossible to stay ahead of the game, but I feel like we're way more collaborative in using all the technology tools, and how can we reach families and get to them quicker, to be sure that everybody has access.
Margo, I appreciate your comments about recreating things in 8 days, and honestly, that's what occurred, and we're now improving on that, hopefully, and have been doing that all summer long. I would say that the number one thing for me, and still remains the number one thing for me, is effective communication in multiple languages. Working how to authentically engage families and community in language. We've done quite a bit, and there's quite a bit more that I'm sure we still need to do and can do. One of our primary outreaches has been through Facebook. We've developed some linguistic-based, affinity-based Facebook communications that have been helpful. The person who is presenting our presentation, we've recently hired to help with our translation and interpretation services and organize that. So we have a dedicated resource to helping with family engagement and some of these pieces. As well, in addition to that, we've expanded our work with our bilingual assistants. They were original 6-hour employees, and they've been offered through a memorandum of understanding the opportunity to work up to 8 hours. So we've literally added, a substantial amount of work there. We've increased the bilinguals that we're hiring. We've added a Somali, or we've added a position. We haven't hired it yet, but we've added a position to continue to support Somali families. And for the first time ever, we're adding a position for Oromo. So those are some of the things that I can think of. We've increased our budget capacity around our translation and interpretation line. So there's quite a bit that we've done. And I'm not suggesting it's enough. We're continually learning more and how to do it better. But I really want to thank senior leadership for hearing and aligning resources to get us adjusted to move towards that direction. So that would be, I think, my first comment on that.
I would have to agree with what Margot and Brett said about just kind of trying to get your boots on the ground in a very, very quick turnover. I felt like students were grieving the loss of seeing their classmates and their high school experience. At the same time, we were all trying to figure it out in real time. And I think getting them to have the mindset that this is your new normal and what you're doing in high school right now really does matter, and staying engaged matters. So many of our students, I think, thought that we were going to be returning in a couple of weeks, or we were going to be returning after spring break. And that was a very confusing message all around that I think that we were getting from the leaders in the country and our communities. And so just getting that mindset around school's still important, and trying to convince kids and students to kind of stay with their learning.
You know, my last year for me was my first year as principal, so kind of everything was a huge challenge. However, spring offered absolutely some very acute challenges, and I think we've spoken to many of those challenges. And so rather than duplicate, because I would echo the words of my colleagues, I think that communication in its multiple forms was definitely a challenge, because we went into an environment where, you know, we went from having access to me, and I pride myself on making myself accessible to families, you know, regardless of time, to being told that we can't necessarily connect, right? So we have to find these other ways. So one of the ways in which, you know, I'm reconciling that this year in this kind of period of uncertainty as we kind of begin the school year is to offer up weekly Wednesday information sharing sessions with my families. And so I'm averaging, you know, 30 to 50 families a night checking in with me and asking great questions about what's to come. We brainstorm and create ideas for how to solve problems that maybe families are going through out in the community too. So that's one way in which I can connect. Another aspect of communication that was really challenged in the spring was just communication between me as the principal and the families that could, you know, come into the building, right, for our PBIS assemblies and our other get-togethers and things. And so, you know, we're working right now to help recreate and reshape some of those experiences to make them virtual and to keep people connected to the school through not just academic means, but just kind of through that school spirit platform as well. So.
Thank you. So my next question is, just take a moment to share something you've observed or seen or heard about from another colleague in the school district that you were inspired by. So I like to call this positive gossip, talking about someone else positively when they're not there to hear it, right? So what's something you've seen? I'll share one quick from me. I loved a video virtual open house that Maple Grove Middle School put together, and they had the 8th graders do a virtual tour of the school to welcome the 6th graders, and I loved it. I thought that was super clever and fun. And Margot, we're starting with you.
Okay, I will give a shout out to the behavior intervention teacher over at Palmer Lake. And we worked with her this summer. She was ahead of the curve and took all our PBIS work and attached it to what it would look like in a distance learning model. So all the teach-tos and expectations that we do, like in our cafeteria and walking down the hallway and out at the playground, they redesigned their matrix for being an online model. And so we took Palmer Lake's work and we modified it for Rice Lake as well. So we will be able to have teach-tos right off the bat on Monday for what is it like to be in a Google Meet, and what does it mean to be respectful and a learner and responsible, which is our PBIS go-tos. So a big shout out to Sheila Mayer at Palmer Lake Elementary.
Boy, that list could go on and on for me. I've witnessed so many amazing people, conversations that Brett, you and I have been involved with around equity, just some tremendous people working there. The tremendous work that occurred in our English Learner Summer program that Kirsten ran and her team, extraordinary work. But I have to say my favorite, Margot, was your video. and it was tremendous. If you haven't seen it, it's the must watch.
So I have the great opportunity of working in a host setting. I'm not a teacher, I'm a social worker, and I've worked in a lot of other places, agencies in the community. So I just have to give a collective shout out to teachers. Honestly, I am constantly amazed at their "we can do it" attitude, despite chaos in the community about what people think about education and you know, just having to sort of adapt about all these different kind of models, not having schedules kind of out on time, lots of adaptations with attendance. I just have to tell you, I just observed in my school just the positive attitudes and people just kind of plowing through and jumping over obstacles and hurdles. And I just think teachers are the kind of the best professionals around. That's my shout out.
I obviously have been inspired even by my colleagues here in this session. I would lift up the work of specifically the childcare workers that have been working since spring and through the summer, providing childcare services to the children of first responders and other important personnel. They really did kind of two things. One, they stood in at the beginning of kind of the pandemic as it came into came to our front door, and they worked with kids and they were on the front lines, and I applaud them for the work that they did. But they also, in doing so, left a blueprint behind that schools can follow. And I think a lot of our COVID preparedness work was kind of stemmed from some of their learning experiences through this spring and summer. And so they paved the way for schools like mine to be able to feel really well prepared to start, because they've gone through some of those practices and were able to work with us through that.
I would definitely say what other people have said already. I work mostly with teachers at the high school level, but certainly know that the Kid Stop instructors and the nurses have done tremendous work to make sure that kids are cared for, families have childcare when they need it, and that our return to school is as safe as possible. And the custodians have worked so much over the summer and continue to work extra hours to make sure that our classrooms are ready. I mean, I can't tell you at Osseo Senior High, we have countless classrooms, and to pull out extra desks and to rearrange desks and to make sure that everything is ready to go in so many spaces that look so different because of the way Osseo Senior High was built, is a huge challenge. And just like Sandy said, the time and the energy that teachers have put in being flexible and trying to find creative ways of assessing students where it doesn't look like a typical Schoology test that just goes out to kids, knowing that that's not the best way to do it, and it's easy to do somebody else's work in those formats. So making sure that it's authentic and it's real. And I think very much like what Bill said, I think it's this idea of it's a blueprint going forward. How do we do school better? And I've honestly seen teachers re-examining the way that they deliver education and think if anything positive can come out of this. There's so much creativity of new ways of imagining how education can work for students in so many other settings than in a brick and mortar setting that doesn't work for everybody.
Thank you. Those are awesome examples. Before I move on to the next question, why don't we tackle a couple of questions that were posted in the comment box that I think have a similar theme to them. So the questions are really around, will students at the high school level be online all day when they're at home? Or will it be more like spring when assignments were posted to be completed? That's from Tanya, and Jessica was also wondering the same thing for elementary. So could maybe Brett, you spoke a little bit to this. What I heard you say earlier was the high schools are having a increased effort to have more face-to-face time instruction with teachers, is what I heard you say.
Yeah, we are definitely So we have a model, and every high school has opted into a slightly different model of how our classes are going to look, but that the expectation is that there will be live sessions every week, and that is an expectation across the district, that there will be live sessions available every week so families can attend those, and those schedules, again, are going to vary by site. But in our high school, we are doing first, third, and fifth hours on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then second, fourth, and sixth hours on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And that will be the same whether it's the hybrid or the distance model. So when it's the hybrid model, there'll be A's on Mondays and Wednesdays and B's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so we want to keep that similar model in the distance learning model as well, just knowing that we will have to likely bounce back and forth between models. None of it, there's no ideal schedule, but that's kind of what we came up with as the least confusing. And even as I'm saying it out loud, it's like, really? That's the least confusing? But it was the best we could come up with to make sure that families knew, students knew when to check in with us. And yeah, so that, again, there will be the opportunity to do it asynchronously as well. So if families students aren't able to get online, either because of connectivity issues or childcare issues or employment issues, any other healthcare issues, that there's the opportunity to do that outside of that traditional school day as well.
Great, thanks, Brett. And maybe Bill or Margot, could you kind of speak to elementary schools?
I definitely can. You know, the feedback that we received from families, and I think it was pretty consistent across elementary schools, is that there needed to be more structure. So yes, we want to do some live teaching, but overall we want to have more structure to the day. The kind of crisis teaching model we used in the spring, I think, served many families that had flexibility needs, but there were many families that wanted the structure of knowing and having some predictability. And so I think that some of the scheduling models across the 17 elementary schools really have more predictable times to log in and see teachers online live, but then also know that there are other segments of the day that can be flexible. And so I know that at Oakview, for example, we really are trying to work to make sure that there are very set times of day with the same Google Meet link where they can log in and see teachers and work with teachers, and then also have lots of other opportunities to learn using various digital tools in those places in between the live sessions. So the structure overall, I think at the elementary level is maybe the big change that you'll see going from the spring to the fall.
Well said, Bill. And I think when families get the schedules for the week, it's going to look a lot more like a regular school day, whether it's 9 to 3, 8:30 to 3:30. Knowing that not all families will be able to engage in real time, so sections of the day will be recorded as well. So we're really being mindful that for some, the school day is going to be in the evening, just due to family circumstances.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to our next question, and Rev, I'm going to start with you. So how are you thinking about building community for this upcoming month? And maybe what are some steps you're taking to help build community?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, overall, as people probably are aware, that we are working as a district to bring in a coordinator for family engagement work and community engagement work, and that position's posted, and I'm excited about that. Where we're really getting through my department some of our most direct family engagement work is through our bilingual assistants, and they're reaching out to community to learn more of their needs and to be able to provide resources. They're a tremendous asset. We also are working to schedule our time with our American Indian Parent Committee, our advisory committee, the APAC, and that is being scheduled as we speak. I know that Ethan Nairdahl, who is our Indian Education Coordinator, is working on that. So those are a couple areas that specifically through my department, we're working to have authentic family engagement.
So we know especially that adolescents need this community and perhaps kind of have missed it the most, kind of with distance learning and not being in school. Peers are probably their most important people in their lives at this time. So, and I also think that when adolescents aren't with each other, they're always worried about what the other person is doing and feeling like they're missing out on fun and not knowing how to connect. And I think that fosters those feelings of isolation and depression and anxiety. And so this year, what we're going to be trying to do is to have more interactive experiences. We're hoping to film some kids kind of at the 3 high schools to talk about their experiences during distance learning during this pandemic, and all the other things that have been happening, and be able to sort of share kind of some funny moments, some stressful moments, some strategies, how it felt not to be by themselves in an attempt to kind of normalize this kind of collective trauma that we're in together. And so, again, just building on more interactive experiences and kind of exposing kids to one another and giving them opportunities to connect. So obviously building relationships one-on-one and offering groups are another thing. But I think overall, just kind of like helping kids understand that they're not alone.
That's really good. Yeah. I think at an elementary level in particular, building community at the beginning of the year is like the single biggest initiative that we have, right? Because it sets the tone for the entire school year, and it really aligns all of our kids under those really important common themes around, PBIS and some various things that we have going, and involving families in the life of the school right at the beginning of the year means that we'll keep them involved throughout the year. And so, one of the things that we did even yesterday was we hosted a reverse car parade. And of course, as you probably were aware, the weather was supposed to stop raining by 3 and it didn't. And so my amazing team here at Oakview, instead of looking to cancel that event, found rain ponchos and other things, and they went outside with little plastic tarps and covered their materials. And we went out and we greeted over 100 cars easily in just the 2-hour window that we had open. And, there is something about the energy of seeing kids again. And so that's where it begins. And once we start instruction and we start to be able to connect and build community within our virtual classrooms, that's going to spill over into our kind of virtual assemblies, and then thinking about a couple initial parent family evenings that we're planning that can be done virtually. And so rather than have everyone come into the school, which right now is just kind of a big no-no, we're going to look to use digital tools to leverage these opportunities to build community from within our own homes.
So we're looking, like I said, to do the synchronous sessions and having check-ins for students at Osseo Senior High. We have advisory every single day now. Usually we have it once a week, and I have seniors this year, so we have them all 4 years, the same group of advisees. And so they're seniors this year, and just checking in with them to make sure that they're doing okay, because a lot of them are having anxiety about what does wrapping up their school experience look like? How do they graduate on time? How do they make plans for next year? And that's an anxiety-provoking time of life for everybody, but especially when you're trying to do that virtually. So doing things like that, we always have learning conferences at the beginning of the school year where parents get to walk through their schedule. We're still doing that, but we're doing that in a virtual way. So we'll be doing that on Wednesday, where different times they'll have different Google Meet links that they're able to click into at specific times, so they can at least get to know their teachers. And so we're doing some struggling about how do we involve interpreters during all of that process, and how do we make sure that that's accessible to all of our families, and hoping that that goes as well as our parent-teacher conferences did. We had a much higher, at least of my English learner families, our multilingual families, we had a lot more parent participation than we normally do, because they were able to do it with flexible timing. They had specific windows of time that they could check in, and so we had interpreters ready, which is always helpful.
Mimicking everybody, it is just about that human connection, I think. And today at Rice Lake, some of our families started their little 10-minute personalized open house concept. And I could just feel the energy coming back into the building as staff began seeing families and seeing the kids and making a connection. And so we're just going to stay strong on that. A lesson learned from last spring is our teaching doesn't always have to be whole group instruction. We can really break it down into 15-minute small group instruction. So we've given a lot of professional development last week about what that could look like in the schedule. So we're, like always, you do it one relationship at a time, and we're just going to keep with that focus, whether it's instruction or if a family reaches out and they need something, instead of an email, we're really trying to pick up the phone and just make that personal connection to hear a human voice, since we know the computer is going to be such a platform for us. And then, of course, activating language lines, very easy to do with the telephone, and just really try to implement the human touch as much as we can right off the bat.
Great, thank you. And our next question is, what are some steps that families can take to support their child in both distance and hybrid models? So kind of maybe some helpful tips for families. And I think we're starting with Sandy.
All right, so tips for families. So first of all, I always like to sort of name, I kind of, what we're going through right now. And there's a name for this, and it's called collective trauma. And we've been here before. 9/11 was collective trauma. World wars were collective trauma. Social unrest and injustice is collective trauma. And so is COVID. So I think the first thing to do is kind of naming that with your family and with your children, and letting them know that we're kind of like all in this together, and we're sticking together on this. There's a bunch of tips. I think that one of them is to say that you don't know what we don't know, that it's okay that this is a little bit of an ambiguous time, and we're going to be fine in this ambiguous time. We can get through this ambiguous time, but not having all the answers is quite okay. Sticking to basic routines, as much structure as you can. And really for parents, kids always take their cues from us. They take their cues from teachers when they're not with you. And the more that you can kind of stay calm and centered and take care of yourself, and the same goes for us as teachers, just kind of the better that the kids can respond to that. They can detect unrest and stress probably better than anybody. So we want to do that. But talk through feelings, give them little small breaks when they need it, catch them doing lots of things right, encouraging them. It's really hard to not be in school. So having a lot of grace with them is really important. So those are just some quick ideas.
I think those are all great. I'm really glad that you spoke first to the social emotional well-being and kind of checking in with kids. And I think it's really important for families to remember a couple things. Number one, unless you are working in the field of education, you haven't been formally trained in the pedagogy and the instructional strategies that we use. And so, I would invite you first just to give yourself a little bit of grace yourselves as caregivers and as supports to home or remote instruction. I've said to families that feel like they've fallen behind or let the school down in some way, I just try to remind them that, the work that you're doing at home to support the learning is the very best work that you can do. And we appreciate it so much. More than you know, because we would never want to ask that much of you in a typical year, but we find ourselves in a place where that partnership it has to be stronger than ever by default. So just, give yourself some grace and understand that, unless you are like a trained teacher and can work your way through things, that your kids are going to show up to you differently as students than they will be as your children. And then just from kind of a understanding of the K-5 spectrum, really understand that, you know, our kindergarten and our younger primary grades are going to need more of that direct support, and maybe the upper 3, 4, and 5 need a little bit less. And so as you think about how you plan and structure your day, build in, you know, the chunks of time that fit in your schedule to do the predictable work that you're able to do. And please understand that if you and your family situation, if it's done in a way where you can't attend some of the live lessons, the biggest thing that you can do to support your child's learning at home is just be in communication with the teacher. As long as the teacher understands what's going on in the life of the family, they could be flexible and help and work alongside you, because that's our whole purpose when we're doing this style of learning. So just stay in communication would be a good recommendation too.
I think that's a good segue to what I was primarily thinking of, which is going back to the biggest challenges we faced in the spring was getting a hold of families and reaching out to families and not having up-to-date phone numbers, not having up-to-date email addresses. So what I would really strongly recommend is check on Parent View. Make sure you can get into Parent View. Make sure your students can get into Student View to be able to access the information, to see grades, make sure that you know how to get into Schoology, you know how to get into Seesaw. Check in those places first and just kind of see what it is that your what your kids are supposed to be working on, and don't hesitate to reach out to the teachers. I think for me, the easiest thing is to get emails or get messages through Schoology, but there are a number of ways that you can get a hold of us. Those would just be the easiest ways. I know that at the high school, especially with our multilingual families, we're using talking points, which we'll see more and more of through the district this year. And basically what that does is it sends out text messages through cell phones. So again, we need cell phone information. So that would be good, helpful information to get from families so that we're able to do that. And give us some grace, especially at the high school. We have 150 students plus a day. So if we aren't always on top of everything, and especially during hybrid learning, I'm going to be super honest, we're teaching live during the day, and then we're trying to figure out how we're doing that online learning on the days that the kids aren't there and supporting that. And it can't all happen on a Friday, I'll be honest. So up-to-date grades during hybrid learning are going to be a challenge, and but don't hesitate to reach out. We're not teaching bots. We're not these computers that are just cranking out little widgets of educational information. We're in this because we love working with students and we love working with families, and I wouldn't still be here if it weren't for that. So especially given everything in this last 6 months. So please reach out. That's what fills my bucket. So please reach out.
Okay. Well, you're going to hear a theme, and it is please over communicate. My advice would be it is impossible to over communicate. So if you're unsure about something, whether it's an assignment or something is happening in your home, just let the teacher or someone know. These are stressful times, as Sandra said. We're going to have some windows or rhythms that are going to feel very traumatic for our families, and we don't need school to add to that. We want everybody to go to bed at night with peaceful minds and hearts. And so if something is bothering you, please reach out, or if you're wondering about something, we are here to help. We are here to ease the way. And again, no one knows your child better than you. So anything we can do to help, just reach out.
Well, I would echo much of what you've heard, but I think I'll add a couple other things, right? The See in the Clear model talks about the human purpose, and what a beautiful time to connect to our own humanity and dive deeper into our own identities as a family and as a community. And I think there's real opportunities to do that where there might not have been before. The E in the Clear model, the Clear model is a model that we use to help guide our pedagogy and our leadership. And it talks about having an environment where our racial and ethnic identity is not only valued, but contributing. Now that learning is taking place in the home, what does it look like in your own identity context? And explore that as a family. The relationships and the knowledge that your children can get that what they would have not gotten from their traditional instructor is so robust. And I'm thrilled for the opportunity for children to be learning from their primary and first teachers, their family, their parents, their elders. And so I think there's a real unique opportunity here. And lastly, I'll talk about the R in the Clear model. It's this idea of relevance and the idea to make this learning opportunity socially applicable and really explore critical thinking. These teachers and administrators that work in OSSEO are not just about rote memory for you to leave with some basic tidbit of knowledge. They're deeply committed for you to be able to have that critical component. And this is an opportunity for us to explore that. And lastly, back to echo the things that you've heard, advocate for yourself. If you're not getting what you need or missing, if we're missing the mark, I need you to advocate. And if that's through our bilingual assistants or my equity staff or other resources, please make sure your voice is heard so that we can have the opportunity to work with the system to address those needs. Those would be the things I would suggest.
Okay. Yeah, and I would maybe add to communicate with us. Let us know what you need. Don't ever be embarrassed about asking us or telling us what's going on in your life. You know, I know one of our biggest learnings last year, in my opinion, was how many folks just simply didn't have access to internet or good wireless connections. So we took action on that. You know, we budgeted some money to buy hotspots and bring them to people so that they had Wi-Fi at their home. I was very excited about the federal and state government's announcement this week about providing free meals for these first month or two. I think that's fantastic. We heard from many families who had some food scarcity, and we did it whatever we could to open up, I think it was 11 of our sites all spring and summer to make sure that folks had access to food. So we don't take action 100% of the time someone shares a need, but boy, do we try to meet the needs that folks bring up to us. So I would also say, let us know what's going on. It's safe to talk to us. We keep things confidential, and we know, at least my experience has been, if 4 or 5 people bring it up to me, there's a whole heck of a lot more people who are also dealing with it, but just haven't shared it with me. So that's kind of how I tend to look at things from a district-wide lens. So maybe for our last question, as we're running out of time, and again, if you're on the call and you want to post another question in the comment box, please do. And Bill, we're going to start the last question with you. What is your main message to students and families as we're ready to restart on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, it has been communicated over the summer because I made videos for families in anticipation of maybe what we know now to be kind of an unusual start to the school year. But you know what? There are things in life that we can control, and there are things that we cannot. So I've released myself from trying to hold on to the things I cannot control, and I've invited families to do the same thing. But the thing that we can control, and my message to students and families, is it's time to get excited about learning again. Like we understand what happened in the spring. We learned a lot in the summertime, but we're raring to go. And families, it's time to get excited, because that spirit passes into the child. And when they get to be a part of learning, whether it is through a computer or when they come to school, it is an exciting time again. And it is one of those things that you just can't replicate in many other environments in this world. There is something really special about the start of school and the hope that comes from new beginnings together. And we are going to be together. And, I like to reflect back on the notion that we are Oakview strong. And I believe that similar message gets communicated in all of our buildings. But my one most important thing is it is time to take that uncertainty and hold it right next to you, but understand and get excited about what's to come, because we are going to be learning again together. And we have a great journey ahead of us. In spite of things around us, we're moving forward together.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest suggestion, and I think this has been said a number of times already, is just make sure that you're staying on top of things and helping, the kids that you support to stay on top of things. And that doesn't mean that it has to happen that day. That it doesn't mean that it even has to happen that week. But make yourself, or have kids help kids make a list of what it is that needs to be done. What are the essential things? And if you start to get behind, don't get embarrassed about it. Ask for help. A number of times students would say, well, I'm already behind, so I'm going to give up. And that's certainly not the attitude we ever want students to feel, that they need to give up. There are a number of ways that we can say, okay, these are the most important things. This is what is essential to make sure that you can at least pass. You might not have the grade that you want, but at least we can make sure that you're passing and you're getting credit and you're making progress towards graduation. And if you struggled last spring trying to make things work for students, then we need to talk about that. We need to have a plan about how we make up credits from the spring so that you can graduate on time, as well as staying on top of things going forward, so that it doesn't get further behind and people feel more despondent about their education, and exactly what Bill said about getting excited, getting re-energized for education. And again, don't be afraid to ask for help. We can't support what we don't know. The number of times that I had kids who said, this is what's going in my family, like, you can't keep asking me to do things. I can't know that until somebody communicates that. And we don't get information unless it comes directly from families. So please share that with the teachers, even if you have to share that multiple times with multiple teachers. We can't share that information amongst each other for privacy reasons. So please just reach out to all of us, and we're more than willing to accommodate when we know what's going on.
I think our message too is excitement. We're ready to start a new year, and regardless what the model is, that excitement is going to be there. The Rice Lake motto this year is lean in, link arms, and learn big. That can happen in any year, regardless of the model. And we're excited. And as Brett said, if things aren't working, or Rev, get your voice in there. Let us know what's working. Let us know what's not, because we just want to have a dynamite 2020-21 year. We're ready. We're ready for you, and we can't wait. Cannot wait.
So my message may have a different tone to it than others, but it really stands in line with all the work that they're doing. One of my employees has developed a mantra, and it is, you're special and your existence is a must. And in these times of social unrest and just the reality of what we are looking at as a community, as a country, and as a world, knowledge is a powerful tool that can be used, and education can be a platform that you can gather that in to lead for the reforms that I think nearly every human being is looking for: a socially just and righteous place. And if that is our goal, and your goal, this is a year like none other to really engage in your learning opportunities, to ensure that you're gathering knowledge so that you can be part of the reform that you are longing to be part of. So this is our year. Let's learn.
Rev, that's a perfect segue. I also wanted to give a little bit of I love the rah-rah excitement. I think it's fabulous. I also wanted to give it a little mental health perspective. Agree that we're all going through lots of adversity, and there's something sacred too about being able to work our kids through adversity together in this kind of dynamic, and kind of show that they're resilient. And not only are they resilient, but that their bodies have a lot of power. And the more that they can listen to their bodies and we can listen to our bodies, it tells us what we need. And so I would just encourage families and students to take time to listen, to be mindful when they need to go for walks in nature when they need to exercise, eat well, know that they're resilient in their own person, and that we've taught them something just in kind of going through this together. And doing all of this, and with what everybody said, I'm sure they can link arms and learn big.
Well, thank you all for sharing those items, and I want to thank Margot and Bill and Brett and Sandy and Rev for being our panelists today. I appreciate it. I also want to say thank you to Christina, who found out yesterday at about 2 o'clock that our staff person who's been setting up the webinars every day was unavailable today, and she stepped in and made it happen. So Christina, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, thank you to everyone who joined in. We have been posting these virtual family conferences on our YouTube channel, ISD 279. And again, like I shared earlier, I'm thrilled. We've got over 500 views just from what we've posted in the last day or two. So I'm glad that that kind of reflects what folks were sharing about asynchronous and synchronous as well, right? So we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to access this content at any time. So again, thank you to our panelists for their insights, for their vulnerability, for their excitement, and for their genuineness. I appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great night. And cheers to a good start of the school year.